know the idea of an alter ego might seem a little crazy. Trust me, I get it. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but hear me out on this because it could quite literally change your entire life. Hello friends and welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Jillz and I help women step into their power, embrace their womanhood, and transform their lives. So if that's something you want to do, you should subscribe and stick around. Also, a special thank you to Shortform for sponsoring this video, but I'll get into that later. So an alter ego. Really? An alter ego? Yes, really. And it sounds a little bit extreme, but it's actually not as weird as it seems, and it's gonna make more sense in a little bit. So I've talked about this topic very briefly in the past, but it deserves its own video because once you understand the importance of this concept, not just of like an alter ego, but the importance of identity and self-image, it changes everything. Also, I just finished reading this book in only 2 days, The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. So a lot of the stuff that I touch on that's specifically about alter egos comes from this book. So if you want to dive deeper into this topic, then this is a great read and I'll link it below for you. Okay, so there are two ways that change happens in a person's life. The first way is the most common way, and most people think this is the only way to make real change, and that is by changing your habits, your behaviors, your actions. And of course, this can totally work. There's no doubt about that. Habit changes can be very valuable. But the reason why this works is because if you stick to a habit for a long enough time, not just like a few days, not even really a few weeks, but like a long time, eventually your identity will start to shift. Your self-image will start to shift. You know, if you force yourself to run 5 times a week for a long time, eventually you will start to identify as a runner. But there's also another way. It's actually possible to do it in the reverse. So instead of changing your habits and your behaviors in hopes that one day your identity will change, that you will see yourself differently, which can oftentimes be a really slow and painful process and where you can keep failing and falling short, what if you shifted your identity first? Instead of going from the outside in, you can go from the inside out. And that is the major key here in this video. If you keep trying to reinvent yourself, level up your life, become a new person, and you keep failing and falling back into old habits, it's because your self-image has stayed exactly the same. If you're gonna take away anything from this video, I hope it's that sentence. Your identity has stayed exactly the same. And that's why those new habits, that new lifestyle, it never sticks. You identify as someone who is insecure but trying to be confident, not just someone who's confident. You identify as someone who lives an unhealthy lifestyle but wants to live a healthy lifestyle, wants to start working out more, wants to start eating better, not just someone who lives a healthy lifestyle. In the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, another great read, highly recommend it, he gives an example of a man who's trying to quit smoking. When someone asks if he wants a cigarette, he doesn't say, "Oh no thanks, I'm trying not to smoke." He says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." A very small but also very big difference. He's not just trying to shift his habits, he's trying to shift his identity, which then naturally shifts how he shows up in the world. In his book, he says that behavior that is incongruent with the self will never last. If you want to change your life, the most powerful way to do this is to actually start focusing on the self first, not necessarily on the behavior. You have to change the way you see yourself, the way you view yourself, and the stories you tell yourself at a core level. If you identify as someone who's always broke, who's always unhealthy, who's always shy and insecure, who can never find a good man even though they desperately want partnership, if these are the stories you tell yourself constantly, if this is what you believe about yourself, then that is what will happen. You will show up in the world, you will behave in a way that makes those stories true, that keeps your identity intact. And this is the second most important thing I'm going to say in this entire video right here. We are always in a subconscious way looking for things, experiences, and people to validate our current identity, even when we don't like that identity. Think about the girl who always gets with guys who treat her like crap. Not just like one bad guy, but just like a solid rotation of really crappy dudes. At a certain point, it's not just a coincidence, it's a pattern. Because at a deep level, she identifies as someone who is not worthy, who is not deserving of love, who is not good enough. And there were probably situations in her early life that created certain stories in her head that taught her this. And those stories created an identity. And once you create an identity, that stuff sticks. And everything in your life revolves around that identity and validating that identity. So therefore, if you want to change your life, like truly change your life, you have to change your identity. And that's where an alter ego comes in. So let me start off by telling you about a girl named Ashley. So Ashley was an artsy girl. She loved music and she played a ton of different instruments, and eventually she got into singing and making her own music. And music was her biggest passion, and she was pretty good at it. And she had this dream that one day she would be a famous artist and pop star, but she doubted herself. She didn't have confidence in herself. She didn't think that she was good enough. She didn't feel like she deserved to be seen. And truthfully, she didn't feel like she had a chance to make this dream come true. And of course, this held her back. She was just a girl from a random town in New Jersey. She had no money. She was kicked out by her parents. She was basically living on all of her friends' couches. And honestly, she was a little bit of a stoner. So in her head, she was like, why would Ashley become famous? She had no confidence or belief in herself. So she decided to change her stage name, not because she thought she needed some, catchy name to become famous, but to reinvent herself and change the way she viewed herself. And Ashley went on to become a mega pop star known today as Halsey. She just rearranged the letters in her name. When she was asked about the name Halsey and why that's her name, she said, I had to become somebody completely different. At the time, I felt that Ashley didn't deserve to be famous and successful because she wasn't that special. But if I made Halsey, maybe she could be. So to her, Ashley couldn't do it. Ashley wasn't good enough. Ashley was afraid to be seen, but Halsey, she had a chance. She didn't believe in Ashley, but she did believe in Halsey. It wasn't just a change in her name, it was a change in her identity. And she said, Halsey is kind of like a manifestation of all the exaggerated parts of me, so it's like an alter ego. This shift in her identity and this alter ego changed the trajectory of her life. And there have been many people, more than you might think, who have used alter egos to create success in their life. Kobe Bryant had the alter ego of the Black Mamba when he was on the court. A ton of successful athletes have used alter egos, and he actually talks about this in his book because he works with a lot of athletes. Beyonce created the alter ego Sasha Fierce. When Beyonce was younger, she actually sang gospel at her family's church, and she was actually a lot more shy and reserved. And the alter ego of Sasha Fierce helped her to separate herself from that shy identity and become more sexy and fearless. And eventually she killed the whole Sasha Fierce thing because she didn't need it anymore. Marilyn Monroe, whose real name was Norma Jean, definitely used this approach as well. There were so many people who used this approach. You can see a lot of entertainers because they're usually more like vocal about it. Eminem, Slim Shady, David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust. There's a ton of them, but there's also a lot of people who use this, a lot of successful people who use this behind the scenes because it works. Sometimes the best way to truly shift your identity in the way that you want is by being a little bit more creative with it and creating an alter ego for yourself. It's a more playful, fun, and empowering approach to changing your life and becoming who you are and stepping into your highest self. Now, before I move on and dive deep into alter egos, I first want to give a quick shout out to Shortform for sponsoring this video and supporting this community. Shortform is an app that makes the best guides to nonfiction books, and it's basically like book summaries on steroids. Shortform has a ton of different genres like self-improvement, spirituality, health, and a whole lot more. Their guides are super detailed. They break down the books very well and they're really easy to understand. And they also have guided exercises to help those ideas stick. I love to use Shortform to help me remember old books that I've read. I have read a lot of books over the years, so it's really helpful to read back some old summaries of books that I've read like several years ago. And it's also great to help me find new reads too. You can read the book summaries on there and see if it's something that you might be interested in. I actually use Shortform to help me make this video with their book guide on the alter ego effect, just to make sure I was addressing all the points that I wanted to, like why an alter ego works and why it is an authentic version of yourself and how to do it, which I will talk about in a sec. Shortform publishes new books and guides every single week, and subscribers actually get to vote on what new books they cover. So definitely recommend you check them out. You can join Shortform through my special link, shortform.com/Jillz, which I will also link below, to get a 5-day free trial plus 20% off the annual subscription. So moving on, here's the thing. In life, we have many different roles that we play. Todd Herman, in his book, he says we're showing up as different versions of ourselves all the time. It's natural and it's a part of being human. For example, I am a wife, a YouTuber, a dog mom. I don't know if you can see her down there. She's a cute doggy. A daughter, a sister, a friend, an aunt. Maybe you play the roles of yogi, a writer, a painter, a runner, a mother, an employee. An alter ego is just choosing who you want to be in certain areas of your life. So let me share why this works and why it's so powerful. There's 5 really big reasons. First of all, and this is a major one, it helps us to move past old blocks and old stories. It helps us to move past those limiting beliefs. Because when you create a new identity for yourself, yourself, when you create an alter ego, you are now separating yourself from that person and those stories. Those stories, those blocks, those beliefs, they are no longer yours. You have all of a sudden created distance from who you want to be and all the things that are holding you back. You know, if you talk to yourself all the time, like, I can't do this, all these people are better than me, I'm not good enough, it makes it nearly impossible to show up as the person you want to be and become the person you want to become. But an alter ego changes all that. It separates us from that. Things that you would normally get affected by, your alter ego doesn't. Now, second, it can give us the belief that we can do it, whatever it is, that you can become who you want to be and achieve what you want to achieve. Because at the end of the day, if you don't actually believe that those things are going to happen for you, then let's be real, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, there's a tiny chance, but it's not gonna happen. Again, that's why Ashley changed her name to Halsey, because she didn't believe in Ashley anymore. And once you lose that belief, you lose everything. Now, third, there's something called the Batman effect. So there's a study where a big group of 4-year-old children and 6-year-old children were split into 3 groups. And in all the groups, the researchers, they put a toy in a glass box in front of them and gave them a ring of keys and told them that one of the keys would open it. However, no keys worked. They weren't getting in there. And the purpose of the study was to see how long they would try to get that toy, or when would they give up. The question was, how long would these kids persist? And in the 3 different groups, the kids were actually guided to use 3 different strategies. But the first strategy was to guide the kids to pretend to be Batman or some other character like Dora the Explorer or something. And they even gave them a cape and everything. The kids who persisted the longest were the kids who pretended. The kids who pretended to be Batman or whatever character they chose. The second longest were kids who were just encouraged to see themselves as a third person. And the kids who were the least resilient were the ones who just identified as their normal selves. And the study showed the value of what's called psychological distance, creating space and time between our identities, especially in moments of hardship. The kids who pretended to be Batman were able to regulate their emotions better, think more clearly, and persist way longer. It is proven that alter egos, not just in kids, but in adults as well, can help us to have more resilience and perseverance. There will inevitably be moments throughout our life where we will need to persist and persevere through difficult moments. If every time something becomes a little bit challenging, you just give up, then you're not going to get very far in life. Now, fourth reason alter egos can be helpful because they make it so you are much more intentional with how you show up in life. Now, sometimes we just kind of start going through the motions and we fall into old patterns that we don't really like, but an alter ego helps us be much more purposeful and intentional with how we live our life and how we behave. And last, fifth reason, an alter ego is a much more creative and fun way to shift our identity and release things that are holding us back. By having that playful element to it, it just becomes easier for us. You know, if someone asked you to shift your identity right now, it's possible you can do it, but it's a little bit challenging. But if someone told you to embody a certain alter ego, it becomes a lot easier and a lot more fun. I know some people are thinking, isn't an alter ego just being fake? And I understand that, but let me give you something to think about. Think about if you are a quiet or more shy person. Maybe you know someone like that, or maybe you feel like that's you, so you'll relate to this. Oftentimes, so many shy people will say, yes, I'm shy, but once I'm around the people who I really know, who I'm really comfortable with, I am loud, I'm goofy, I'm funny, I'm weird. You know, like I'm quiet until I'm really comfortable with you. But in that case, are you really a shy and quiet person? Or is that just you hiding who you naturally are at first? Is that just your fear and anxiety getting the best of you? Let's say a woman uses an alter ego to be more confident. Is it really fake? Or is it just giving her permission to be her truest, most vibrant self? Todd Herman, the author of this book, argues that oftentimes our alter ego is the realest version of ourselves because it's us without being held back by stories and limiting beliefs that are keeping us stuck. He says that many of the people he's worked with have first said that an alter ego feels a little bit weird, kind of like a mask, something that's protecting them, only to realize later that their alter ego was actually who they always were and always wanted to be. Your anxious self, your fearful self, your insecure self is oftentimes who people think they are. That's who they identify as, but it's not you. And an alter ego can help you get out of that rut. And I have honestly used this approach as well. You know, my first name is Jillian, but I go by Jillz, but I didn't really get that nickname until much later in life. But most of my friends just call me Jillz now, and I am Jillz on social media. And Jillian, you know, much younger Jillian, she used to be very shy and reserved. She used to be very anxious and fearful. Jillz is not. Jillz is confident. Jillz is creative. Jillz puts herself out there. Jillz makes videos for the internet. But the real truth is that Jillz is the truest version of me. These traits were there all along. I always had them, but I used this new version of me, Jillz, to fully step into them. Becoming Jillz, as cheesy as it sounds, helped me tap into the identity of the woman I always wanted to be and the woman I always knew I could be. And now it doesn't matter if you call me Jillz, Jillian, Jill, Jellybean, Jilly. I don't care, because my identity has already shifted to Jillz and what that represents for me. If you want to use the power of an alter ego, you don't necessarily have to make up this entirely new name for yourself. But it can be a little helpful and a little fun to create like a fictitious name or even a nickname of yourself in your head for that person that you're aspiring to be. You don't have to tell anyone, but this can dramatically shift your identity in the way you view yourself and the way you show up in the world. So let's talk about how to do it. So the book goes into way more detail on how to do this. So if you really want to dive into this, definitely get the book, but I'll cover the basics. So first of all, you need to get very, very clear on what is frustrating you in your life. What do you think that you're capable of doing that you're not doing? What is holding you back and what needs to change? Clarity is super important. However, make sure that you are actually aligned with that version of yourself, that version you're trying to be. If you're just making up some person in your head because you think that's what would make a cool person, but doesn't actually resonate with you, it's probably not gonna work. And then once you have that clarity, then think about how would your alter ego behave? How would they show up in the world? What would their posture look like? You know, would they hunch or would they pull their shoulders back? How would they walk? What would their facial expressions look like? Also, what would they look like? How would they dress? There was a study that showed that people who were given a white coat to wear, like a doctor's white coat, during certain tasks, they became much more attentive of a person. That's because what we wear means something to us. It is symbolic to us and it affects us at a deep level. Now go even deeper into this alter ego. What does that person believe? What do they value? What are their thoughts? He also talks about how it can be helpful when you want to embody your alter ego self to have a certain object or totem, as he calls it, to help you embody that energy. So for example, on the front of the book, there's a pair of glasses, and that's because the author actually uses a pair of glasses to transform himself into his alter ego self. He doesn't actually need glasses, but he wears and puts on these non-prescription glasses to make him feel more intelligent, more capable, to help him get rid of that imposter syndrome. And when he's done, he takes them off. Actually, Martin Luther King Jr. did something very similar as well. He actually wore fake glasses in public because he thought that it made him look more distinguished and more intelligent and more of a leader. So this totem can be something you wear, something you just carry with you, or something that's just relevant to you in some way. You know, it could be as simple as just like putting on some lipstick or lip balm. Now, when you want to start doing this, when you want to try embodying your alter ego, he recommends that you don't just try to do it for the first time in like these big scary situations. Like if you're giving a speech in front of 500 people, that's not like the first time to try it. Try it in tiny ways first to practice. When you go on a walk, go for a walk as your alter ego. How does she walk? What pace does she walk at? How does she swing her hips when she walks? How does she carry herself? And just see how you feel. Another good idea is to go to a coffee shop or a restaurant as this alter ego. Just start going out in little ways as her and get used to it. You know, it might feel weird at first, but it should feel good. And the most important thing to remember is that you are not pretending to be someone else. You are not pretending to be your alter ego. You are embodying your alter ego. Again, it's not about being fake or childish. It's about using the power of creativity to bring forth the most natural and highest version of yourself, to bring forth that new identity the easiest way possible. And he says in the book, it's incredible how quickly we can change our concepts of what's possible when we adopt a new identity. So an alter ego is not really as crazy as it seems, and it's actually been done by way more people than you think. So let me know your comments below. What do you think of this video? What do you think of this topic? I would love to hear your thoughts. Now, if you want to keep binge watching my channels and you haven't seen this video, How to Become the Woman of Your Dreams, I highly recommend you check it out. If you like this video, you're gonna like that one. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time, or I will see you over there. Bye.